Okay, so today I'm going to talk about roles of 5G innovation and industry transformation. So everyone think or have been hearing about 5G, and I'm sure many of you have 5G handsets by now as well, right? But still, from a consumer perspective, we still think 5G more from a consumer play, more from a faster speed perspective. But actually, I think ever since 2017, when I was in Huawei and doing roadshows around the world, right, we always mention 5G as a platform for industry transformation. Because yes, consumer play will be important, but what really will make 5G take off, we believe at that time and as well as now, is actually the industry, the enterprises that will actually adopt 5G and make it take off faster as compared to 3G, 4G, which were mainly consumer play. Okay, so let's quickly look at what is 5G, right? So I think this is most of the people are from EEEAA here. I think this is too easy for you, right? Some of us may have gone through different era, different generation of the wireless technology, right? I myself started as 2G, right? Did some 2G, 3G systems in Singapore, and I was involved in launching systems in Taiwan for 4G, right? So that was very interesting. And you can see it's almost around 10 years trend when we move from 1G, which I'm sure everyone knows about this phone, the Ta phone, right? Something like a water bottle. And 2G is really text and talk, right? Everyone have a Nokia phone, I believe, when you are in the 2G era. And at that time, SMS is like a killer application, right? So the word killer application, if I'm not wrong, came from the SMS. And everyone start asking, okay, what's the killer application for 3G? What's the killer application for 4G, so on and so forth. So actually when 3G was launched, I was actually doing a project in Singapore for 3G launch. At that time, we couldn't really think of, hey, what are the application for 3G? I'm so happy with my SMS already, right? And I can talk over the phone. So we realized that, hey, actually data is the killer application for 3G. It wasn't from the start. It was after a while that people realized that, hey, I can use 3G to go mobile internet. Of course, in between you have GPRS and other things, right? But 3G with the mobile data really pushes the limit, right? And of course, more what we call OTT, over the top players, people like WhatsApp, people like Line, people like WeChat start coming out with instant messaging, where actually I just use my data, I can do the text as well. I don't need to incur SMS costs. So you probably already know, many years ago, we are limited by number of SMS we can send per month, but now it's unlimited and you still cannot finish or cannot even use maybe more than 10 in a month, right? Most of the time. So 3G really is the mobile data that kick off. And what's the killer application for 4G? So people are so happy with your instant messaging, your OTT players. You can do YouTube, you can do many things on 3G already. Why do I need 4G? So again, when I launched, when I was involved in project in Taiwan launching 4G in 2012, right? 12, 13, where the 4G spectrum was auctioned, right? And we also realized 4G. So again, is it just faster speed? Every time we talk about faster speed, but 4G actually kick off or take off really well with video and social media. Yes, you have your Facebook and other things, but if you realize that instead of just messaging, video chats and videos such as TikTok and other things really make 4G take off much faster. So now we are at 5G, right? 5G was to some extent commercially launched in Singapore, already 50% coverage. So what is the killer application of 5G, right? Anyone want to try? You can type in the chat box as well, right? So frankly, there are many talks. You probably attended many talks from Huawei, Ericsson, Singtel, StarHub, M1 in Singapore, right? Everyone say, okay, 5G, you can do a lot of things. You can do autonomous vehicle, you can do robotics, you can do drones, you can do AV, many things. So what really is the killer application of 5G? I wouldn't say that there is a concrete answer yet, right? There are many use cases, but which one will really be the ultimate killer application or a set of killer applications is wait to be seen, right? But actually, I've seen some very interesting technology in China before, right? And actually, my schoolmate Andy Wong is on this call as well. He brought us to a company called Royal, right, in China, in Shenzhen. And Royal actually, apart from making foldable screens, right, which some people, when devices are launched, right, think, oh, 5G is foldable screen. So you don't need a laptop, you don't need an iPad, you just use a 5G phone, you extend it further, then you can use it as a 5G device. Yes, that may be one case, right? Even people like Royal, they actually do implantation of very thin panel to shirts, t-shirts, or the caps, right? Where you can actually have screens. So that's again like a mobile everywhere kind of a technology where 5G can actually leverage on that. So these are probably just some of the example. But again, as I say, these are very consumer play and very device play, right? 5G, we still believe that the industry, the enterprises will be one of those who actually will make 5G take off much faster, right? Okay, so these are different examples when we were in Huawei, right? In Italy, in Middle East, right? So just to give some numbers, right? These numbers are correct as of June this year. Actually, I did something similar webinar to Smart Nation Office in June this year. So this was the latest data we collected in June. So they are all together about 71 countries and 174 operators that launched 5G, right? Singapore is definitely one of them, right? And spectrum is kind of ready as well. For those of you who may not really know the spectrum part of things, there's some part of the 5G spectrum, the 3.5 gigahertz, that's actually used by some of the satellites as well, right? And we are also doing what we call refarming of some of the 3G network as well, right? So in Taiwan, there is no more 3G if you notice, right? They actually refarm a lot of the spectrum there already. Okay. Then in terms of subscriber globally, right? 5G subscriber, we're looking close to 300 million already. And the growth rate is very fast, right? 36% year-on-year growth. So this is actually, we do see a trend of 5G take up is faster than 4G. But again, the people are still taking it very much a consumer play, very much faster speed kind of considerations, right? We will look at some use cases later on where industry or enterprises can really make 5G move faster. Okay, and of course, as a consumer, we are very particular about devices. So everyone from Samsung, Huawei, iPhone, everyone is launching many models of 5G. Okay, so again, like I mentioned, right, 5G is there, the technology is there, the network is there. To some extent, the ecosystem of handsets is there as well. But is the business model ready, right? How do we really, or how do telcos actually monetize it? And how would enterprise or consumer want to pay for 5G? So these are actually open questions yet. You probably see a lot of trials happening in Singapore, right? But how do you really pay for 5G, right? Do I pay by per data bundles, or how do I really pay for it? Is it a dynamic pricing? So these are actually open questions that some of the courses we are conducted today to the telcos, right? We actually, my group of people, we actually conduct 5G training, 5G business modeling training to telcos. And these are some of the questions we actually explore with them together. Okay. So it's just, is 5G just faster speed, right? So definitely this is one of the things that we all know, but we want to say that it's not really just about faster speed, right? There are many key attributes of 5G as compared to 4G LTE that we see that is important and what 5G can offer. First of all is the latency, right? 5G is able to give 1 millisecond latency. In fact, later on, you'll see another statistic. Some of the vendor can actually go down to sub-millisecond latency. And latency is important when you need to do very real-time kind of coordinated operations. Example, your cobots, right? Collaborative robots. Example, your remote surgery. So latency is really important from that perspective. Okay. Throughput perspective. So latency is 1 millisecond or even sub-millisecond is 30 to 50 times better than 4G, right? In terms of throughput, it's about 10 times better than the 4G as well, right? So you can have faster connections, right? In terms of connectivity, it's 100 times better than 4G as well. So this goes into what we call the IoT world, where especially like what Prof. mentioned, in the smart cities, you are looking at massive IoT connections. So 5G will have enough capacity for you to have more IoT connections or more devices connections. Okay. In terms of mobility, is about 1.5 times faster than 4G itself. Okay. So these are some key attributes. It's no longer just about speed that the 5G can offer as compared to 4G. And a very quick numbers from Huawei Lab, right? So in terms of low latency, right, as I mentioned, it has gone down to sub-millisecond. So there is tests that shows that Huawei equipments can go down to 0.33 milliseconds. So that's below 1 millisecond. That's a very good low latency. In terms of throughput, it is able to go up to even 28 gigabit per second. Okay. In terms of connectivity, connections, device connection, LT connections, it can host up to 1.08 billion devices. Okay. So these are some of the trends that are already tested in the lab. Of course, when you go down to the real enterprises, things may get delayed or changed due to the different situations, right? But altogether, all in all, 5G is able to offer better latency, right? Lower latency, better throughput and connectivity as compared to 4G. Okay, so again, when I teach 5G business modeling, right, even to some of the telcos, I can say, I always tell them you can forget everything, right? If you cannot absorb the 2-day course. But one thing you need to remember, if you say you have attended a 5G webinar or course before, that is what I term it as a 5G capabilities triangle, right? This is from ITU, it's not new, I didn't invent it, right? But everyone who has attended a 5G talk would definitely need to know about 3 capabilities of 5G. First one is what we call the enhanced mobile broadband, EMBB, right? So this is the common, I'll say layman understanding of what is the meaning of higher speed or better speed or faster speed, right? So this one supports things like AR, VR, supports things like 4K, 8K video, cloud gaming, and so on and so forth. Yeah. The second one is actually URLC. I go to the third one first, right? That's ultra reliable low latency communication, URLC. This is the one that in your AV, autonomous vehicle, as well as remote surgery, to some extent smart manufacturing, where you need low latency for the robots, for the cobots to work. That's where you need the URLC. Okay. The third one is actually MMTC. So it's called massive machine type communication. This is again very similar to your massive IoT, right? So again, connected world, and then your smart cities. This is where you have many different types of IoT connections, and your 5G needs to be able to house different devices up to probably like what I mentioned just now. You can host up to 1 billion, right? Connections. Okay. So a little bit of I'll say network part of things, right? NSA stands for non-standalone. SA stands for standalone, right? So what it really means is actually there are people who asked me before, 5G people are just starting to launch recently. So how come like 2017 we are seeing already 5G use cases? People already say I can do 5G, right? A lot of the initial deployment of 5G is in the non-standalone. That means your core is actually on 4G network, right? And then only your new radio is on 5G, right? So this is where actually a lot of the AR, VR applications, or maybe to some extent cloud gaming, they're already leveraging on some part of the 5G capabilities back in 2017, 2018, right? To actually offer so-called 5G capabilities. But the real 5G capabilities that involve URLC and MMTC only comes about when standalone network is actually launched. Okay, and of course there are other 5G capabilities such as network slicing and MEC, the edge computing, that you need a full standalone 5G network for these 4 other capabilities of 5G to be actually realized. Okay, so if you look at Singapore news, right, since we are in Singapore, actually in May, Singtel launched the first 5G standalone network in May this year, M1 launched in July, and StarHub launched in August. So I'm sure you can do a quick Google. I mean, everything we can learn from Google nowadays. You do a quick Google, you can see what are the different use cases that Singtel M1 and StarHub has actually introduced with a standalone 5G network. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, again, if we do a quick Google or search, right, we always say 5G will change life, right? That's the tagline and the promotions that the telcos and even to some extent different government or enterprises is promoting, because we need to move to 5G, right? So they always say 5G will change life and transform industry. So the first one is definitely about EMBB applications, right? So in terms of EMBB, as I kind of mentioned just now, right, there's a lot of video related and AR, VR related kind of applications. They are leveraging on the 5G EMBB capabilities, right, to produce use cases for the industry. Okay, and AR, VR, I think this is a hot topic. Today, I'm sure whether you talk about smart education, right, smart classroom, you probably have AR, VR being implemented. When I was in UK in 2018 or 19 in a Huawei MBB forum, right, we actually seen many AR, VR companies in UK. To some extent, some of them are startups. They actually launched a lot of AR, VR content to try to leverage and show the capabilities of 5G. And some of these are very meaningful. For example, I was quite impressed with one of them where they actually they built AR, VR content to train firemen, right, in a fire situations. So you can't really train firemen, sending them to a fire situation right from the beginning. So they actually have all this AR, VR thing to guide and train the firemen, a fresh fireman, right, how to fight a fire in that sense. Then recently, I think last year, I also worked with a company from Korea called Tetra. So they are actually a AR, VR company also from a CPR, right, smart healthcare perspective. So they actually can train. You need to press at the right place, and then they will give you instructions. So actually train healthcare professionals in CPR. And of course, they are building more and more content. So I think there are some investors on this call as well. There will be one slide talking about the ecosystem where what are the companies we can look at investing, right? But I would say AR, VR content development is one of the key industry or key trend where there will be more and more companies that will be coming up to build AR, VR content and leveraging on 5G across industry, right? From education, from manufacturing to healthcare that I have just mentioned as well. Okay. And then from a EMBB application, right, you can see from the simplest way, we are looking at live broadcasting, building contents, doing gaming. I think we are very familiar with this using AR, VR. But what we are also seeing is if you have a chance to visit the 5G AI lab of Huawei in Changi Business Park, you can see some smart tourism. So they have two sets. One is the Marina Garden, right? They actually took some videos there, and then you can do a smart tourism over there. And they also took South Africa safari, right? You can kind of run alongside with a lion as well, right? So smart tourism is another key applications of the AR, VR technology for sure. And of course, today we're also talking about mixed reality, yeah. And education and healthcare is what I mentioned before, right? That's another key EMBB application. So there will be more and more content that's being developed on the AR, VR to leverage on the 5G capabilities. Okay. The other application is leveraging on the MMTC applications. So again, this is very IoT related or IoT centric, right? So definitely we are looking at whether we always pitch in Huawei, in Africa and some other places about smart agriculture, but that's not really relevant to Singapore. But to Singapore, we already have smart metering, right? Whether is it your electricity, is it your gas, we already have smart metering. And this trend will be more and more. And again, I personally involved quite a lot in healthcare. So from a healthcare perspective, we are looking at chronic disease management and so-called community-based care. So there will be more and more, I would say, IoT devices, right? Whether is it for prevention, or is it for detection, right? Or is it just for home monitoring, video analytics, right? These are the things that will be more and more devices deployed in the nursing home or even in the assisted living HDB flats in some of the flats, HDB flats in Singapore, right? So this is leveraging on the MMTC applications. The next one is URLC applications. So from a URLC perspective, we are looking at, again, I'm sure you see many robots running around in Singapore these days, right? Whether is it the Bedok Reservoir, you see patrolling robots, or you go to a Singapore General Hospital, you see a concierge robot called Tammy that actually guide you along. So we are seeing more and more this kind of autonomous robots, right? But these don't really, to some extent, need to use the URLC capabilities of 5G yet, right? But it's good to have because you can have real-time communication with them. But what is really important is what I've seen, and you'll see later use cases from a smart healthcare perspective, right? Remote surgery, you would really need a lot of URLC. Okay. And of course, another key thing which I think NTU itself is doing a lot is I think the autonomous vehicle, right? There's a feeder bus that's running, which is a autonomous bus that's running in NTU. So that's definitely trying to leverage on the 5G network as well. Okay, this is from STL Partners, a UK-based research firm that we used to work with in the past. So they actually look at it from many different industry and how 5G can impact different industry. So you can see that from a industry perspective, manufacturing, right, the dark blue color here, right, will be a key contributor by 5G. So 5G will contribute the highest number of GDP and the value to manufacturing industry. Right. Of course, this may or may not be directly relevant to Singapore, but we can see a lot of smart factories trying to use 5G as a network, because today there are different types of network that's running in a factory scene, right? You will have a leased line, of course, and some of it may have Wi-Fi, right? But again, from a security perspective, from an overall OPEX perspective, 5G promise to be the right options as compared to your dedicated leased line, as well as other wireless technology or IoT network that can contribute to a manufacturing industry. Okay. And the other one is key industry to look at. Although it doesn't contribute the highest number of GDP, but it does contribute a lot to cost saving. It's actually in healthcare, right? So from a healthcare perspective, we are looking at the connected ambulance or remote patient monitoring. So we are looking at possibly having devices, whether at home or even your IoT devices, that is what you're carrying as a consumer devices, right? Passing data and integrating the data back to the hospitals, right? And these are the ones that if you have a seamless data integration, and you can actually monitor and reduce the patient traffic in the primary care facilities, you can actually achieve quite a good cost savings in the healthcare industry. Okay. So as I mentioned, 5G impact in manufacturing is the highest according to STL Partners research. So these are the two that we have always used as use cases. One is actually Lufthansa, right? They use 5G standalone network with MEC to do aircraft maintenance, predictive maintenance, right? So with the data being collected and handing over, they can actually add on IoT devices to monitor as well as giving a predictive maintenance. The other one is Ford in UK, right? They use it to do the vehicle production, which we can see in the next slide in typical factory settings. How are different capabilities of 5G being actually used in a smart factory? So this is a smart factory use case, right? You can see on the right-hand side table, there is URLC, which is one of the capability as we mentioned, right? So for that, you actually provide ubiquitous wireless connections, right? So if we look at from an entire factory line perspective, right? From a predictive machine analytics, right? And then you provide the ubiquitous wireless connection across the entire factory floor, right? So that one is leveraging on UIRC perspective. You can save costs on the cable, right? And then you can also increase the manufacturing flexibility. Then from a MMTC perspective, that's the next two, right? We will have a lot of sensors in the factory floor, right? And MMTC, which is the IoT connections, will provide the necessary connectivity, right? And say that data acquisition of the different data across the different parts of the line itself, right? And the other one is what I mentioned, similar to Lufthansa. You can use MMTC, which you have the different IoT devices or sensors to collect data and provide predictive maintenance to that. Okay. And last but not least, leveraging on the EMBB capabilities of 5G, right? We can use AR and VR, right, to do the floor monitoring or the factory monitoring itself across a device that you have, but you are in a remote monitoring angle. Yeah. Then we have two other things below, right, that we actually see things like drone surveillance, right? So drone surveillance is also be able to use 5G capabilities, right? And also many years ago, I actually worked with another company. They actually have anti-drones capability because they actually kind of help to monitor the petroleum site itself. Yeah. The other one is a 5G remote robotic operation. So this one is an oil rig example, but in Singapore, actually similar example can be found in PSA itself, right? That's another 5G remote robotic operations. Okay. So this is one of the example that you see from just now is the smart manufacturing use case. And most of it actually is being realized already in the Huawei phone manufacturing in the southern side of the Shenzhen city, right? So this is, you can see there are different AI detector, right? Then you have AGV that's running, right? And you have the AR assist where people are standing here, right? To some extent is remote, right? It's not directly remote out of the factory, but they are not going into the factory line itself. They can see and monitor different parts of the factory using AR access. Yeah. So this is an example that's already in production. Okay. From a smart healthcare perspective, there are actually, again, different use cases that we can see 5G being useful in a healthcare scene, right? First, if we look at EMBB, right? So EMBB, what does it help in, right? It triggers a lot AR, VR use cases, as we mentioned, right? Because it's data heavy, right? And we need very fast content transfer. So in this case, right, we can use, we can do remote education of healthcare using AR, VR capability, right? Today, actually, it's already being done as well, even without 5G, but 5G actually helps to make it better, right? Today, a lot of times is if the 4G network cannot take it, right, we will do a traffic optimization or offloading. Yeah. Then the other key trend is leveraging on the MMTC capability of 5G, right? There is this thing called IoMT, Internet of Medical Things, right? Which actually is talking about similar to IoT, but it really focusing on medical devices, right? So today, again, there are different IoT network, right, that people are using. It can be LoRa, it can be Sigfox, it can be NB-IoT, and so on and so forth, right? But some of them are also using 4G. But with 5G, we can actually introduce something that connects all the different types of devices and IoT devices together. Yeah, and this goes into the consumer part of things, where you can wear like your Fitbit and others, as well as the medical devices in the hospital settings itself. Okay, the last capability of 5G is URLC. So from a URLC perspective, the most famous case study is actually remote surgery, right? So there's a difference between remote education and remote surgery, right? So pure remote education, like what I mentioned about using tetracycline player in CPR education, that one you can still just leverage on the EMBB. That means without the full standalone, you can still do that, right? But to really do an actual remote surgery or even a collaborative robot assisted surgery, you will need to leverage on the URLC capabilities of 5G itself. Okay, and one example that is always quoted is the one that China has successfully tested, I think earlier this year, 2021, right? It's in Fujian, right? So they're actually able to do a remote surgery to remove the liver, right, of a lab test animal at a remote location, right? So this is using the 5G connections to control the robotic arms itself. So if you look at the left-hand side of the graph, right? So on the y-axis is actually the latency, right? As we say, 5G can offer sub-millisecond latency below 1 millisecond, right? On the x-axis is actually the bit per second, right? So the one highlighted in red really leverage a lot on the 5G capabilities, especially the URLC, right? So really to do surgical robotics, AR-aided surgery, you really need 5G, right? Because you need a standalone 5G some more, because you need the capabilities of URLC, right? But to do things like remote ward, right? Sending robots doing patrolling or checking around the ward, yes, 5G is definitely helpful and good, but you can still do it without 5G. That's why today there's already robotic nursing assistants being tested out even without 5G, right? Same thing for telemedicine, same thing for medicine delivery drone. All this, of course, with 5G, you can always do better, but without 5G, you can also do that as well currently, okay? So this is probably more for the investor. I presented in the investor forum before. So people always think, okay, 5G, who benefit most from it? Is it the telcos? They are just going to keep on earning money, right? So that's definitely one part of it, right? And is it just the Huawei and Ericsson, or is it a chip maker? So these are the one outside this circle, right? So definitely the telco will be thinking ways of monetizing 5G, right? And they will benefit from it after all the CapEx investment. Definitely the system suppliers, right? The Huawei, Samsung, the network providers, they are definitely going to benefit from it as well, because they manufacture those, right? You will have software, right? And standards bodies who will also be benefiting or setting the standards, right? And you will have the equipment and the material who needs to material provider who needs to actually provide those chipsets as well. So these will be the together with the foundry and manufacturing, and they will be actually benefiting from 5G as well, right? And the chip manufacturer. So these are the common ones that we know from actually 3G worlds or any telecommunication world that they will be benefiting from the ecosystem of the 5G already, right? But what we don't know or may not know is actually there are many other players that we can look at, whether investing in or even joining them to work for them, is the people, other companies who actually leverage on the 3 different types of capabilities of 5G. So if I start with EMBB, right, as I mentioned, there's a lot of AR, VR content. So I already seen and worked with some of the companies that generate the content of it. But of course, to what we know is really still the HoloLens and all those things, right? The AR, VR glasses. So this is one part of it, but I really focus a lot on the content provider because I really think that is important. Of course, to leverage on the MEC capabilities, a lot of things will be moved to the cloud, right? So cloud computing companies will be another one that is key, right? And then the video company, right, that we are familiar with, right? Those who provide the 4K or even 8K video contents, right? And then telepresence, that's another key industry that will leverage and benefit from 5G. So I will say that these are the companies that will leverage on EMBB capabilities of 5G, and they may generate the next killer applications of 5G. Okay. Then if you look at the next capability is the MMTC capability. So this is what everyone is familiar with IoT, because I understand there's a lot of people involved in IoT work here, right? So whether is it the most common one like a smart home, right, that some of us already are using or building, right? All the robotics and drones, right? Some of that in the smart factory settings, right? All the different mobile living from your home appliances. So these are the potential ones that are using, these are the potential ones that are using the MMTC capabilities of 5G. Okay. Then the URLC is another key thing, right? So from a URLC perspective, we already look at it. Most important is mission critical applications, right? Whether is it in the surgery or is it in autonomous vehicle, right? So these are the key things, and companies who are involved in the different parts of either building an AV or building settings or contents for mission critical applications. Some of these are software companies as well, and some are hardware companies, right? FinTech, to some extent, you may or may not always need to use a URLC capabilities, right? But definitely some part of it in terms of real-time communications and real-time transactions, that is not a simple transaction, but you need to do an AI-based transaction. So these will be the things that will be leveraging on the URLC capabilities of 5G. Okay, so this one is a further elaboration of the previous slide, that people always think that the current ecosystem, which is all your telco and telco related providers, as well as the OTT over the top providers like your WhatsApps and others, right? Spotify, these are the ones who benefited from 3G, 4G, right? So are they continuing to be benefiting? Yes, to some extent they are, but we also see 5G ecosystem is no longer just a one-way channel or one-way traffic, right? We are seeing that industry are also providing use cases back to the providers, and they will kind of co-monetize it together with the provider, right? So today, a smart manufacturing or maybe a smart healthcare, right? So they will buy the 5G network from the telcos, but at the same time, they are offering, right, their services to other people, because today a lot of things are as a service. So you can do manufacturing as a service as well, right? From a healthcare perspective, you probably are working with your IoT companies, and you offer community-based care as a service. So the end user or the enterprise users like a hospital, like a manufacturing plant, they are no longer just paying the telco of using 5G. They are also using the 5G capabilities and offer their service as a service to the end user itself. So that's why we see an ecosystem of players in 5G. It's no longer a one-way monetization by the telco ecosystem only. Yeah. So in terms of 5G status in Singapore, this is not the latest slide, right? And there are always new development. For example, I think just a few months ago, Singtel announced that they will make the entire, they will connect the entire Sentosa Island to be 5G ready. right? And there will be different use cases like a smart city use cases, right? Is it a petrol robot, and then mobile clinic, right? Different things on the Sentosa Island itself, right? But these are the ones that are presented by IMDA sometimes back, right? So I think NTU is one of them here as well in terms of, yeah, urban mobility, right? There is a 5G research lab, and then I think there's autonomous feeder bus that's running in NTU as well. Okay, and the other key use case will be the PSA, right? Together with M1 itself, that's maritime. Okay, and another famous one, because some of my students for the public course actually came from Capital Land. So Capital Land is also testing AV, right? Autonomous vehicle in some of the, I think, Biopolis campus, if I'm not wrong, right? So these are the different 5G development in Singapore, and I'm sure there are more to come. There is a 5G garage. Some polytechnics are also running some of these 5G test labs and corporate labs. Yeah. Okay, so I would say 5G is an ecosystem of future technology. As I mentioned, 5G provides a connectivity, but in order to monetize from it and to have industry transformation or having new innovative companies like what we have explored coming out, you need different technology that comes hand in hand and work together with 5G as well, right? AI and big data analytics, BDA, these are the two key things for sure, right? Coming from AI doctor company, we were not leveraging 5G yet, but definitely we were thinking of having more, I would say, tele-diagnostic capability together with the teleconsult that we have built and AI triaging, right? Tele-diagnostic will be something that you need 5G capabilities, right, to provide real-time accurate data to the AI doctor itself. Okay, and in terms of blockchain and cybersecurity, I think this is again due to, let's say, data acquisition, right? We need to ensure security of the data that's collected at different parts of the 5G network and enterprise networks, right? And blockchain, again, when you have more and more data exchanges, right, to really provide the security and the privacy of the blockchain, you need that to happen as well. Then others that's already happening, like 3D printing, you may or may not need 5G, but of course with 5G different capabilities, it can actually help to improve, right? And others will be AR, VR, and robotics. So we always talk about, I actually presented about cloud robotics before, right? By having the sensors as what we call the leader's robot, and the rest will be just collaborative, yeah? So this is again leveraging on the 5G capabilities, especially the MEC, the cloud computing capabilities of 5G. Okay, last but not least, I shouldn't advertise here, but you can just do a quick Google NUS 5G, then you will be able to find a course that we run to the public, right? So this is something that we actually use a business model canvas to do business modeling of different 5G use cases so that you can bring it to your company if they are trying to use 5G to create new use cases, or even setting up new companies like, let's say, example, AR, VR content development company, right, that you can leverage on 5G capability. So we actually work with you during these courses to generate that. Okay. Okay, with that, I think I kind of overshot quite a lot. So thanks for listening in, yeah, and feel free to ask questions and we can discuss openly. Thank you.